It was believed to be impossible. After drifting through the void for nearly half a century, Voyager 1, the farthest traveling machine ever built by humanity, was nearing the end of its mission. Its orientation thrusters, silent since 2004, were assumed dead. Without them, the spacecraft couldn't aim its antenna back toward Earth. Without that crucial alignment, communication would fade, and with it, the mission would quietly slip into silence. But then, just as a critical system shutdown loomed, and the last threads of contact threatened to break, NASA made a final desperate attempt. A quiet command was sent into the darkness, one last whisper, and astonishingly, against every expectation, those long dormant thrusters came back to life. For decades, Voyager 1 had relied on a precise ballet of minute thrusts to keep its high-gain antenna locked perfectly on Earth. At a distance of more than 15 billion miles, there's no way to manually steer it. Everything depends on those tiny jets of force. In 2004, the primary roll thrusters stopped functioning. Their heaters had grown cold, and NASA shifted to the backup system. These backups were thought to be dependable, but by 2025, even they began to show signs of failure. Residue had slowly built up inside the fuel lines, threatening to choke off the flow. Without roll control, the antenna would drift off target. There would be no dramatic explosion, no catastrophic failure, just a gradual, inevitable loss of contact. The timing couldn't have been worse. The only antenna on Earth powerful enough to communicate with Voyager, Deep Space Station 43 in Australia, was scheduled for nearly a year of maintenance. If the backup thrusters failed during that period, there'd be no way to send instructions or re-establish a link. Failure was no longer a distant threat, it was a countdown. There was one option left. Try to wake the original thrusters that had been untouched for over 20 years. No one believed it would work. What if the heaters failed to activate? What if the trying to fire the thrusters while they were frozen caused permanent damage? The risks were high and the odds were low. But a small team of engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory had a theory. Maybe the 2004 issue hadn't been permanent damage. Maybe it was something more mundane, a flipped switch, a dead circuit, a problem they could still fix. So, they devised a careful sequence of commands, timed down to the second, designed to warm the thruster's heaters before triggering any actual movement. On March 20th, 2025, they sent the signal. It would take 23 hours to arrive, then another 23 to get a reply. And finally, it came. The heaters had activated. Temperatures rose. The thrusters responded. "It was such a glorious moment," said propulsion engineer Todd Barber. A piece of machinery that hadn't moved in 2 decades had just come back to life. The results were immediate. With the primary roll thrusters reactivated, Voyager could once again hold its orientation. It could maintain its communication link, steer as needed, and continue sending data from beyond the solar system. This wasn't just a technical fix, it was a mission-saving moment. With the signal secure, NASA could now think ahead. Conserve, power, rotate instruments, extend the mission's life into the 2030s. In a world where modern devices become outdated within a couple of years, this spacecraft, launched in 1977, was still talking to us, still exploring, still teaching. And now, with those old thrusters working again, it even had a reliable fallback in case the newer ones failed. Voyager 1 isn't just a relic from another era. It's still an active observatory, floating on the frontier of the unknown. It measures interstellar plasma, maps magnetic fields, and tracks the subtle edges of the sun's influence. In 2024, it had gone through a troubling stretch, months of corrupted data caused by a memory fault. But by 2025, all 4 science instruments were fully functional once more. And now, with stable orientation restored, Voyager is back to doing what no other probe can, exploring where the solar wind fades into the true interstellar medium. Its findings are helping scientists redefine the edge of the heliosphere, the bubble carved out by our sun's influence, and laying the groundwork for future deep space missions. When word came that Voyager's long, silent thrusters had roared back to life, the scientific world paused. This wasn't just another routine update. It felt almost poetic. A machine older than the internet itself had responded to a faint signal, as if answering a question whispered into the dark. News outlets around the world picked up the story. Headlines spoke of miracles and resurrection. Experts called it one of the most unlikely successes in the history of space exploration, and to many, it felt like a message not from Voyager, but from the cosmos, that patience and persistence matter. That endurance can, in its own way, change the outcome. People everywhere reacted, students in classrooms, scientists in labs, dreamers, scrolling through forums late at night. They looked up at the sky with a renewed sense of wonder, because something that should not have survived had. Voyager's revival wasn't just about salvaging an old spacecraft. It became a symbol of how far belief and determination can go as new missions like the Interstellar Probe take shape and engineers explore propulsion systems for the next generation of explorers. Voyager's journey is no longer just history. It's guidance. It's data. It's a functioning blueprint for surviving the extremes of deep space. Its architecture, once considered outdated, is now a case study in resilience. The very design choices made in the 1970s, using handwritten code and analog systems, are now being analyzed for lessons in longevity. The information Voyager sends back on radiation, plasma, and energy use feeds directly into models that will shape tomorrow's spacecraft. We're not starting from zero. When we build what comes next, we begin with the legacy Voyager created. There's a strange duality in what Voyager 1 has become. It is both the most distant human creation ever made, and at the same time, one of the most closely watched. Every maneuver it performs is a reminder of our limitations and our capacity to transcend them. It sends data every 45 hours in signals weaker than a snowflake hitting the ground. And yet, through stadium-sized antennas, we hear it, we read its messages, we wait for its voice, as faint as it is. Over time, Voyager has become more than a spacecraft. It's a symbol, a quiet emblem of persistence and hope. It reminds us that even in the most silent, most lifeless parts of the cosmos, a voice can still be heard, if we're willing to listen. And perhaps the most profound thing about Voyager 1 isn't what it's doing now, but what it stands for. On board is the Golden Record, a time capsule of Earth. It includes greetings in 55 languages, the sound of a baby crying, songs of whales, and a map showing where we are in the galaxy. It's a message not meant for anyone specific, but for anyone who might one day care. And now, as Voyager continues its impossible journey, its ancient thrusters firing after 2 decades of silence, it tells us something deeper. Our drive to reach beyond, to explore, to speak into the silence, is what defines us. Voyager is still out there because someone chose not to give up. Someone believed it was worth one more try, even when the math said otherwise. And maybe that belief, against logic, against fear, is the most human thing of all. Drifting now. In the endless dark between the stars, Voyager 1 travels a path no other creation of ours will follow for centuries. It has no destination, no promise that its message will ever be received. But it moves forward, steadily, because that's what it was made to do. It's not just a spacecraft, it's a memory vessel. A record of who we were when we believed curiosity alone was reason enough to act. A record of Earth in the 20th century, encoded in grooves of gold and pulses of data. With every faint signal it sends, Voyager doesn't just deliver science, it delivers a message. You made me, and I'm still here. And in bringing its thrusters back to life, we didn't just fix a machine, we revived a promise. As long as Voyager flies, some part of us remains out there, unchanging, undeterred, and unforgettable. It was built to outlast us, to go farther than we could, to speak when we no longer can, and almost 5 decades later, it still is. A thruster thought to be gone forever has stirred again. A spacecraft many thought was fading has refused to vanish. In a vast universe that owes us nothing, Voyager has whispered back. Not because it was easy, and not because it was supposed to, but because someone, somewhere, chose to try. And so that belief continues to glide through the stars. Do you think Voyager 1's journey is just science? Or is it something more? Something like a legacy?